Hey guys, Lumen02. Currently playing a game of Canadian Highlander. I'm playing with I'm sorry, not Red Dead Wins. Blue Moon. No. So this is kind of a classic deck in the format, in most 100-card singleton formats. You put blue and red cards together in eternal formats, it's going to be pretty good. This is a slower, more controlling build of the deck. Balix Benson, who are playing our Instant Q, is their moniker, tends to play. Well, at least historically with me, has played token shells, but they could also be like a person who loans or borrows their cards. So it's also likely that they're playing something completely different. So we see a Serious Sanctum, which means probably some variant of Enchantress to me. I'm just gonna develop this Dread Arcanist if it gets like Path to Exile. All right, we're gonna get Enlightened Tutored here for probably a 1 or 2 mana enchantment. I don't know what it could be. We'll see. Okay, Mox Sapphire. Alright, well, they're just going Mox heavy. They wanted a land drop, essentially. So they're not playing artifact lands, but they do have a 2-drop, is what they're telling me. The name of this game is going to be, like, Draw Red Source, ideally. If I can blow up both their artifacts, I can really kind of screw them on mana, which would be good. That's Plains. So they got 2 mana left. Enchantment. Okay, Nyx Fleece Ram. Alrighty. Here we're kind of at an interesting point, right? So I can't scred through this thing. I suppose I could. I could just scred through this thing and then leave them with 4 mana next turn. So it's 2/2. No, they won't block at that point. I think the right play here is to just... I'm going to try to attack and see what they do. I really would like to find a land drop. Alright, they're just going to block. I think what I want to do here is actually get their hand. So they're going to gain their life here. The life gain I don't think is that relevant. The other thing is, like, I kind of just want to hit a red source really badly here. So, like... They just scryed. The question is, like, how bad could it be for me? Alright, I'm going to let him go. Because I think just want to develop my own hand here. And if this is, like, a really good enchantment... Alright, this is a baffling end. I think this is fine. Yep. I mean, it kind of stinks, but... it doesn't kill me right here. I don't really have much else going on. Do I want to get rid of anything in my hand? Possibly the Scred. But I can do that with the Vendilion Click and still get into my card. So I'm just going to get rid of the Scred with the Vendilion Click here. It doesn't seem like it's going to be that relevant. If that's the best they're doing on their turn, my guess is they're probably sacking this Omen. Alright, we really do want to find... Okay, that's an Arc Trail. Do I go for a land drop here? Do I fire Prophecy to try to find a land drop? I think the answer is possibly yes. I mean, this Brazen Borrower is kind of nice, but I'm not lifing them anytime soon with this Nyx Fleece Ram in play. Just going to do this. Draw a card here. Okay, well, we're going to have access to that regardless. Okay. And then we can bounce whatever they do, plus... Alright, they're going to sack this Omen, I assume. Okay, which is going to reduce their mana count. And then ideally they do something I can bounce with the Brazen Borrower. And then I can Cryptic Command. I'm still looking to hit this red mana. This is one of the downsides to the like some of the double red cards in this deck, is that we are primarily a blue-based deck, and maybe it's worth relooking the mana base, because I did recently increase the amount of red cards in the deck. Ghostly Prison's 100% fine, I think. I don't think that bothers me all that much. Phyrexian Unlife, same story. I think I'm fine with those. I think, honestly, here, though, I am going to just look to buy some tempo. Just bounce this. Alright, yep. We're going to say go. I'm not going to pay for this. I'll just hang back. They're not really doing all that much. I mean, if they don't recast this thing, I mean, they're going to recast this thing. Let's be real here. I don't know if I care about this thing, though. I'll probably just allow this thing to resolve, because they still have access to 6 mana, right? So this is fine. Doesn't do anything, right? And I think here, I mean, this is a tricky spot, honestly. I think I'm just going to wait. I think I'm going to wait, because I don't really want to get rid of either of these cards. That was a good find. They're not really doing much. I still have a bounce effect in hand if I want to save this Cryptic. And I think I do. Alright. Let's say go. I cannot attack. They still have access to 5 mana here, which is a significant bit. Alright, up to 6. Yep. Alright, that was not a bad one to draw. I'm just going to say go here. Again, I still have access to bouncing this Ghostly Prison. Okay, they're on green as well. I think I'm just going to draw 2 here with the Hieroglyphic Illumination if they opt to do nothing. Alright, more mana. That's fine, I think. I will main phase this. I don't really need that land. And again, I don't think their life total is all that relevant here. Again, I think that's fine. They don't have a way to draw cards right now, so it's not really doing all that much. We will put that on top of our deck. We'll also attempt to resolve this card. I think here I am just going to pay to attack, because I can still leave up Disallow. I can start chipping away. I mean, this will eventually matter. Weird matchup. I mean, if they get a card engine down, like, we can definitely be in some trouble, but they don't. Like, right now, they just have a lot of mana and not a lot to do with it, it would seem. Unless they've been sacking cards and they're trying to, like, wait to double spell, which they could be doing. Thirst for Meaning, I think, is fine. I think that's fine. I mean, it's a lot of cards. It's two cards at a minimum. Possibly just 1 extra card on top. So they get rid of Active Authority. What does this card do? Okay. So you basically trade control of that thing. Caracas can bounce the Vendilion Clique, which is an effect that could be problematic. This gives their enchantments. Do I care about this? I don't think I do, because I mean they can find like an Enchantress's Presence or something like that. But again, like, what is that really doing? They can put it on top of their deck, and if they find the Presence, then I just counter it, right? Or they can find like a combo with like the Phyrexian Unlife. That doesn't seem like per se great. Alright. Here I am going to resolve a Burrell. I'm going to leave up Cryptic Command here. I'm only attacking with 1 this turn. They could start bouncing my legends if they wanted to with Caracas. Seems fine to me. Should attack with 1 this turn. Chip away. They can bounce my thing with Caracas, but like I don't think that's really... They may have to at some point. But it doesn't per se progress the game state. Okay. This means I can't double counter, which is fine. They don't really have anything going on, so I mean, I guess I can double counter with the spell snare if I want to. Tessian Champion. This is a human warrior. Okay, I'm going to allow this to resolve. They're going to get a card off of this. Well, if we're going to begin combat, then we're not. Unless they have a flash enchantment. Okay. I think I am going to take the opportunity to get this down. If they have Wasteland, I want to play around it here, because I only have a 3-mana counter spell. I'm going to play out this Muyon Ling. I'll plus her up. Yep. And they can bounce this Vendilion Clique, but I don't think they're going to want to. I don't think they have anything in hand. I think their hand's just utter garbage. I think they're going to have to sack this to find something relevant. I mean, I could stifle this, but I'd rather them just find something. I can't think of anything that's uncounterable that like would be problematic here. I mean, there could be things though. And also, if like they do happen to just have like 2 really good things, like 1 thing left in hand they've been playing around counter magic with, then we can also Cryptic Command to bounce something at this point as well, if need be. But yeah, Blue Moon just intended to grind them out. Again, Solemnity. Okay, so they want to get the Solemnity combo going. I'm going to counter that, I think. I mean, because then I can't life them out. Although, I mean, like, at this point, like, this deck can win without doing damage. The deck I'm playing. So I think we do just go ahead and get this. Okay. And is your last card relevant? I don't think it is. Like I think if it was, like they would have played this differently. They waited very long to do that. My guess is to draw a second relevant card. That would be my educated guess. I'm just gonna create 4/4s. Just want to end this game as fast as we can. Okay. Going to 6 is interesting here because they can only go up 1 life next turn to 7, which gives me a lethal attack through the Caracas bounce on the Vendilion Clique. It's an interesting decision. And I think it's a safe assumption on their part that I probably have counter magic. been playing like I do. Haven't really veiled that. Okay. Alrighty. Not that the difference between one draw step and two draw steps is all that different. Really, for them, like what's the key for them to win this matchup is going to be getting an engine online. So that game one wasn't like, being very much of a game, because they just didn't have those components available. Yes, we are going to keep this. Got a Flame Slash for any creature-based, I guess, what's the card called? God, the Enchantress, Argothian Enchantress. We can't kill that, but okay. But the hand can deal with quite a bit. Okay, nothing. Is there a reason to say Ponder? I don't think so. It looks like my turns are going to be pretty occupied here. Well, I like all these. I may be land shy. That may be an issue with this hand. But if they do just have the Enchantress, the thing in the ice can't allow us to flip it or get it back into hand and then possibly counter on a backswing. This is an Enlightened Tutor. Okay. What do they get with this? Could just be a Sylvan Library. If they have fast mana in hand, or it could just be fast mana too. It could be a Mox. That could be problematic. But if it's like an Enchantress that doesn't have hexproof, I have a kill for it, and I can opt next turn with my remaining mana. Because the key to this matchup, I think, for me, is just do not allow them to get a card engine online. Most of their cards are not going to be that relevant, but if they're able to draw 2 and 3 cards off of each, singularly less important card, then we can run into issues. Alright, Sylvan Library. That seems pretty sensible to me. Seems like a good call. I don't mind it. I think here, there's an argument to just lead off with Thing in the Ice. Just put the pressure on them hard. And honestly, I kind of like that. Because I think I want to be the aggressor here. I think that, honestly, their long game can be pretty good. They have a lot of irrelevant cards, but if their engine gets online, then they can just beat us very easily. It also limits how many cards they're going to want to draw off Sylvan Library, because if I flip this thing, which my deck is very capable of flipping this card very fast, I can just, murder the face, right? They didn't draw of note here. So what is the relevant 3? There's another argument to leave up Negate, but I just think, their deck is not the most explosive. I just want to get pressure on them. Alright, this card's great for me. I just kill it. And then leave up Op/Negate. I suppose I could have used Bone Crusher here, but I think I want to save Bone Crusher. Mostly just to leave up access to Negate here. If they don't do anything relevant, then I'm just going to be opting anyway. So, I get in some ways that could be less mana efficient, but I wouldn't mind opting either because I don't know what my top card is at this point, and I do want to start hitting more lands. I did keep 3 non-lands off of Ponder, but they were all pretty good cards. Okay. Well, if they're going to take damage here, I think I'm cool with that. They don't take more damage, though. Alright, land would have been nice, but such is life. I have to say go here. We have Sinister Sab to help look for it. Could also just flip this thing on EOT, which I don't mind, depending on what they do, if we just opt plus Bone Crush their face down to 12. A lot of mana this time around. I honestly don't think I care about that. going to flip this thing and try to kill him. I mean, yes, they get to Oblivion Ring here, which is unfort. Maybe I should have. Yeah, I failed to check the Oblivion Ring there. That may have been bad on my part. Alright, well, what do we have? This one? Nope. Put the land away. Well, the question here is that if one card left, I think I want to just take Ponder here. Because I kind of want to get them. I mean, if they have a moat or something along those lines, then they get me. But I kind of want to get them down to 3. Then find a bolt and just win the game. It's also nice to counter the Calyx there. I don't even know what this card really does. Oh, it finds enchantments. Because it's not an enchantment and it won't come back. So, on the following turn. Okay. What does this do? It doesn't do damage anymore? Okay. Okay, rule of law. And then all I've got to do is flip one of these things back to hand. The rest of them become non-creatures. And actually, I have a pretty slick play here. So what I can do is this. I can just flip my own Bone Crusher back to hand. But I can only cast one spell. Oh, yeah, I can only cast one spell a turn. Because rule of law is in place, so I just go to their upkeep, cast the Bone Crusher, targeting them, and kill them. So, yeah. That is the game. Quick pause, guys, to see if we get more games with Blue Red Moon. Hey, guys, sorry. Actually missed game 1 here against Carcinogenics. We're playing against Tolarian Academy, Paradox Academy. Game 1, opponent kind of petered out. That's kind of one of the issues that you can run into with Academy decks. So we're in game 2 now. We're going to be on the play. This hand's not acceptable. It just doesn't do enough against Academy. If it had 2 lands, one of them was a red source, and I was on the play, I'd probably opt to keep it. But as it stands, because like Spell Pierce is kind of nice if they have like a fast mana draw. This again is like kind of dicey, but I think I'm going to keep this one. I'm going to bottom the Arc Trail. Play out the Islet. I have Force of Will, and I Ponder to make my land drops. I've got a Crusher to put some pressure on. Yeah, I think I keep this one. Just get rid of this Arc Trail. If we're pitching here, we're probably pitching the Legacy, my guess would be. Because I think I just need to kill them. Like, their deck, if they get their mana, is pretty good. Alright, well, they kept this hand on 6. Alright, so they have this. They have a bunch of zeros. No. Could have forced that. I think I want to stop Academy itself. They're putting Tolaria West out. It means they probably already have access to their Academy. Alright, well, now we know what we're pitching to Force Will. It'll be that Mystic Confluence, which is a big clunky spell. Oh, alright. I am going to keep this. I don't like it, though. Here, we'll have access to Latinum's Legacy next turn. We are going to draw that land, which is not great, but what are you going to do? I think, again, this is fine. There's still one artifact short of turning on the Opal. I could counter that, but once it's tapped, it's kind of a dumped resource. I think I want to save my Force of Will for something better. Here the question is, what do we get rid of with Legacy? We're going to do it on our turn. It's going to be this Mystic Confluence. This Mystic Confluence, P-bad. Need to hit lands here. Eight or blue cards. Like, all right, that's a good draw. Doesn't work as well with Bone Crusher, but I think this is fine. I don't think I know it's fine. I get 2 cards off of it, which stinks, but I think we have to accept that. Possibly just going to look to Vendilion Clique, depending on what our draw is here. Alright, so they're saying they have access to the Academy. Alright, I think we are... I think we're just Force of Willing this to get them off a land drop here. They're down to 2 cards. Their mana's tapped. There's a Wheel of Fortune. Okay, well, we both spent some resources here. They've spent more, but I think I have to be happy with that. I think here... Just gonna get Peasy down. I mean, if they have, like, a Walking Ballista, that could be bad. I could have also gone for the Ironcrag Pyromancer, but that's gonna be slower. Peasy, you just need to clock him here. Looking for a counter spell. Alright, that's going bottom. I think I'm going to top with that, oddly enough. It's not a counter spell, but it does kill them. And I have this Brazen Borrower to hopefully buy a turn. We're going to see what happens here. They are relatively low on mana resources, at least on the board. That can change very rapidly in a deck like Academy, obviously. Okay, yep. Okay, just a bunch of Signets. Alright, Ponder, yep. Flame Slash not complete. Alright, well, there's the Academy. That sucks for us to see. If it's an Urza, we can probably deal with that. That's kind of what I'm hoping it is. Okay, that's a Paradox, which is really bad for us. So they kind of hit pay dirt here off of that, I assume. Yep. Okay, yep. I assume we're dying here. That was a good hit. That's kind of one of the things with this matchup specifically. Like, this matchup's kind of, in my opinion, uninteresting. It's just like, do you draw, like, your best card? Or your best cards? If you don't, like, you probably get ground out by the blue-red deck. If you do, then you probably don't. They have 7-card hand here, which is not great for us. Now we kind of do want to hit a counter, I think. Alright, well, they can't produce red, right? So we're just going to go to face here. And we are going to leave up access to the Brazen Borrower. I think we're likely quite dead next turn, but we shall see. Another thing we do next turn is we have 3 additional damage off this Ironcrag if we do get next turn. The problem's going to be I don't think we can kill next turn. We'd have to have a hell of a draw, right? Okay, Song of Creation. I'm going to return this. They can opt to recast it, I believe. Yeah, not I believe. I know they can. Okay. This is going to give them the mana to basically redo this. Okay, get rid of some cards. I assume we're just dead here. I assume we are just dead. Alright. They have not played a land this turn. They can untap their Academy, or they could just find Inventor's Fair, which seems the most likely. Alright, Deserted Temples. They just want mana. I guess it's not what they're doing then. They're not untapping their mana. Or they are untapping their mana, they're not finding an artifact. I guess that said, I mean, they already have a draw engine in play. They have 5 on board, plus 3 off this 8 down to 5. Oof. Alright, Song of Creation, yup. Managed to get 1 artifact off the board. I don't know how relevant that'll end up being. We'll see. Not feeling great about my position. But there's a chance they fizzle. I mean, it's not very likely, but there's a chance they do. Well, what have we got? An X spell? Possibly... I mean, if it's draw... Alright, this is going to get... Okay. This is bad for me. But they are low on mana, right? So I assume they have another spell they can cast. Untap this crap. Can they untap the Academy, though, is kind of the question. Can probably just call this one, honestly. Yeah, Paradox Engine is going to be enough. So untap this stuff. What else have you got? 11 cards? I'm just going to call this one. I think we're pretty dead. I'm not going to play through it. It's just going to get me. I mean, maybe it doesn't, but like the chances are very low. And I don't think it's really the best of viewing. It's just like, alright, yep, this deck can go off. And it did there. One of the issues I'm going to run into with this deck, while I do have the moon effects, is that I'm a little more board-based, so this matchup is going to be a little more challenging. We did manage to get him in game 1, which unfortunately is off-cam. Forgot to start rolling. So we'll go first. I think I'm going to say yes to this, but it's risky. Reason being, I mean, I have this Serum Visions on the play is not bad. It's one of the best times for the card, but I just need to hit lands. Alright, so bottom. Bottom. Just want lands here. And hope they don't have like an uber busted turn 1, but they're a deck that can have very busted turn 1s. They did not mulligan, so it's likely they do have a very good hand. Okay, and a Soul Ring. Yep. It's unfortunate. Alright. At a minimum, this is, you know, this is just about a mana, but it's beatable. Alright, we're just going to be probably remanding whatever they do. If they just have Natural Academy, we're probably losing the game. Unfortunately. Okay, well, it's on Academy. I think Worn Power Stone I am going to just remand here to get a little deeper in my deck. I do want to find a land drop here. If I find a land drop, I can leave up the Mana Leak, which would be nice. Also will allow me to loot away probably the Chain Lightning or the Pyromancer. Probably the Chain Lightning here. I don't know, it's close on that one. Probably the Mancer right now. This is fine. Nope. Okay. Get rid of this one. Problem's going to be I don't have a clock, right? So, that is a thing. Alright. That is a card. I think here, what I want to do... Do I want to burn off this Chain Lightning? I don't think I do yet. I'm going to leave up this Disallow, and then next turn we're going to hope to try to... I mean, I want to leave the Chain Lightning hang, because I think I may want to discard it to the Royal Scions. Problem's going to be I need to get a clock. Maybe I'm just Scionsing to do damage. They do have access to the Academy runes as well, which is going to be problematic. This is fine. Discard your land cards. Alright, this is tapping for a lot of mana. You don't want to tap for mana. Is it a stroke of genius? Mind Slaver. Okay. Yep. I'll get rid of that one. Do you have a wheel? They can return this, but it is burning off a draw step. I think we are going to preordain first to see if we can find some sort of interaction. Alright. Here, I think I want to leave up access to the Vendilion Clique, because if we get lucky, they'll try to re-resolve this card. They didn't opt to draw it. So I am going to draw cards from my deck. Okay. Stroke. I mean, we are on the upkeep here. Alright, they're just going to try to go for a buyback, I assume, on Capsize. Which is cool and all. Okay, but it's actually not that big of a deal, I don't think. If it's stroke, it's bad. It's pretty bad for me if it's stroke. Alright, whir is pretty annoying as well. We're going to probably dig next turn and look for a way to deal with that artifact. Do I think they can do anything right here? I don't think they can. I mean, if they have a 1-drop, yeah, they just... I guess if they have a 1-drop, it's not really doing much. Get rid of Scred. Scred's pretty bad. I mean, if it's like Expedition map, it's really bad. Alright. We have mana. That's cool. I think here we actually go for the Mystic Sanctuary. We'll put the Disallow on top. The Chandra is interesting, but I don't think I have time for it right now. And then I have this Royal Scions to get to this card, and then I can disallow their card. They can... Yeah, this is fine. I mean, I don't really mind if they do this. I can just counter it again and again, and it blanks their draw step, which is kind of nice. And actually, here I could just Jace them, right? Yeah. But I'm not going to. I'm going to let them have this, because I don't think this does all that much. I mean, it just forces them to do it again. Which puts them in a very similar situation. So I'm going to draw a card here. Get into this Disallow. Hit them for 4. here we may even be discarding the Jace. I don't know. Yep, this is going to happen. I'm going to do this. If I disallow the triggered ability, or the activated ability, rather, off Mindslaver, then I don't get to loot. I do want to loot. Honestly, here I'm like debating just getting rid of the Jace. I think I'm going to. This doesn't clock. I can cast Opt right now to try to find something more relevant. And then I have this dig to find another counter if need be. But if I find a counter with Opt, then I probably just sit and wait and then use Royal Scions to do damage, because they're on a 2-turn clock with Royal Scions, right? I just have to fade getting beat up by this Mindslaver. So I'm going to Opt here. I'm going to bottom that one. Dak is interesting. Alright, let's dig. We're pretty set. I can't double counter here, but I can single counter. And they're on 0 cards, so I think we got them. And they're on a, well, 2-turn clock. So, there is that. So I think we get there. I think this game 3 here, we're going to manage to get there. Like I said, though, it's kind of a weird matchup. Like, if we do get into this, like, long game where, like, they draw that, like, their deck can draw the right and the wrong half of itself, right? So I don't want to say there's not art to playing Academy, because there certainly is, like, some skill set involved with it, but it's very high variance, a high variance deck. And when you get into these longer games, yeah, it's just, yeah. Alright, reveal. Just had it. When you get these longer games, like, and you're playing against a deck like Blue Moon, which has more high-quality median draws, in my opinion, its game plan is more consistent in terms of, you know, finding what it is it needs. It has a lot more cantrips, basically things that control variance, and it's kind of just able to get there. So, you know, you got to only see 2 of the 3 games in that match set, but basically the first and the third one kind of ended the same way. They, you know, had some powerful cards, some powerful mana, and then kind of just petered out. Game 2, you got to see, you know, the upside of playing a powerful deck like Academy, where, like, you know, you get your mana, and, you know, you have 2 to 3 relevant cards that get you into more cards, and then you just avalanche, snowball into a win. In Game 3, you know, similar to Game 1, which was off camera, just, you know, they have the fast mana, but they don't manage to resolve or have the quantity of high payoff cards that they need. So, quick pause, guys. I'll be back momentarily. Maybe we'll have one more game. If not, I'll probably showcase one from a recording, and then we'll go into a deck tech on Blue Red Moon. Alright, folks, back. We're going to be doing some recorded content here. And one of the reasons is, like, one, I couldn't find a game, and 2, like, I would like to actually showcase an aggro matchup. So playing against Brahms here. Brahms is on a more aggressive deck. They have a mock start here into Vexing Devil plus 2/1 Tattermunge in this case. I just take the 4. I'll go ahead and bolt this thing and say go. I kept a greedier hand based on the power of this Opt into Search for Riscanta, ideally hoping that it was a more controlling matchup. Unfortunately, it's not. Although I was able to just kind of stymie them here. They have a Scab Clan and Mauler, which has to come out as a 1/1. My fear is there is if they have Giant Growth, I'd probably just lose the game. One of the problems I'm going to have this game, though, is I'm doing a lot of damage to myself with my lands. My lands are basically killing me. They go ahead and put a Skull Clamp in, can't do anything about it, but it's not a threat. It's a problem later on down the road, but it's not a threat that kills me. And I'm doing a very good job of just not drawing lands. Look for a land here. Any land will do. I'm probably just going to find a, a mountain here. A snow-covered mountain, so I can turn this Scrat on. Scrat's kind of another card that, like, is interesting right now, because, like, I could opt to not run it. It's a little bit insular in what it does. It's very powerful. Here it only needs to do 1, so it's only going to do 1. The fear is they could just have a pump spell. They do not. They have a collateral damage, which is fine. I'm down to 8, though. and I'm still missing on my land drop, so what I'm looking to do here is probably counter their next spell or Latinam's Legacy on their EOT to find my land drop. They evidently found a land. If they find one more, though, they can bring back this Earthshaker Khainra, which, is problematic. I'm going to need to have this Brazen Borrow around to bounce it after they resolve it, or whatever you want to say it is when you unearth something. Not unearth, embalm, whatever that ability is. Get a Young Pipe Peasy down here. This allows me to leave up Counterspell plus Negate. I actually probably should have tapped differently so I took less damage off casting my Counterspell or my Negate. I did not, though. I go ahead and get Skewered here. I just counter this. I'm only saving 1 damage here, which is bad, but it also gives me a token so I can actually start to win this game. I am going to go ahead and probably resolve the DAC here, would be my guess. Tap correctly this time. Steal the Skull Clamp because I don't want my opponent to get into more cards. They're obviously, they're hellbent. And their draw quality is probably going to be lower than mine is, so I kind of want to keep the game where it's at. I am also very low on life, though. So they're going to go for 6 mana to replay out a 4/4 Khainra. I'm just going to Brazen Borrower this. This is something I kind of projected could be a thing that happened in the game. Let's go ahead and bounce this, which means it just stays exiled forever. It doesn't go back to their hand. Go ahead and draw. Get rid of the plats. You'll see my build. I'm off plats now. I hate plats so much, guys. I just do not enjoy playing plats. I think it's so bad. I say plats, Platinum Empyrean. You play it with Madcap Experiment, and it's the only artifact in your deck, so you find it every time you cast Madcap Experiment, and you take no damage because your life total cannot change. I don't know why I fetched for that. Probably a mistake on my part. I'm going to opt to leave up both counters here as opposed to resolving one of the other spells. They're very dead next turn. They go ahead and try to kill one of my lands. When they kill one of my lands, they cast a shock. I allow it to resolve because I have a hard counter for their next spell, unless it's like, gosh, I can't think of it, the Spell Mastery 4 damage one. But if they had that, they would have just cast it in my face. They have far more. Yeah, they have enough. They have enough in their graveyard to have Spell Mastery already. So if they had the 4 damage one, they would have cast it. And I'd rather not waste my counterspell on a card that probably doesn't matter. So anyways, that is game number 1. Pretty close one. We mistapped in 1 turn. I think we could have taken 1 less damage even at 2 here. Otherwise, I think we played the game fine. I don't think this was, there was that error. I tapped poorly and then had to use my Shivan Reef plus the Fiery Islet as opposed to just taking 1 damage off of an island plus tapping the Shivan Reef to not take a damage to cast Negate. Anyways, guys, quick pause. We'll be back momentarily for the second game in this match. First Brahms, what appears to be RG Blitz. Alright, guys, we're back. Hey, yeah, this hand's acceptable. It's nothing special, but it has a spell Pierce, so, like, if they have, like, something along the lines of, like, 1 drop into Pump Spell plus another 1 drop, like, we can possibly get one of their Pump Spells. It also has board-based interaction in the form of a Braid, and it has Thing in the Ice, which is the big sell on this hand. Thing in the Ice is pretty good against this style of deck because one, it blocks well, and 2, it tends to be a massive tempo sink, blowing out a bunch of 1 drops. So they have a Green Wheel Liberator. I'm gonna go ahead and play out my duel here. One of my duels. I just go ahead and get the Thing in the Ice down. So what I like about this line is like they've developed this threat. I don't plan on blocking it this turn. What I intend on doing is trying to get value off my threat. So I'm gonna take a boatload of damage this turn. But they're on 2 cards. They've committed to the board, and I have an answer to the Green Wheel Liberator, and I have a blocker for the Earthshaker Khainra. And I also have this Spell Pierce to knock out whatever Pump Spell or Burn Spell they try to use on my Thing in the Ice, if they don't make another land drop. So they go for an attack here. It seems pretty likely they have a Shock or a Bolt or something like that. They can throw at this thing. Try to Tarfire it. I just go ahead and Spell Pierce here. If it ever goes to hell, I also have Force of Will because I do want this Thing in the Ice to live. This Thing in the Ice is kind of the instrument by which I expect to win this game. Go ahead and get Search for Sconta down to start filtering my draw. It's nothing special, but it's fine. I am going to Force of Will their play here. They go ahead try to go for a Chain Lightning. I Impulse first to see what I can find. Find a Force Negation, so I figure I'll just save the life total. I'm going to pitch the Force of Will. I don't want 2 pitch counters in this matchup. I'd rather take the damage as well. And it also denies a card in their graveyard, a sorcery card specifically, if, in win there is a Tarmogoyf that's played. But it doesn't seem likely at this point the game's going to go much longer. Put the Stifle Bird on top. I have Memory Lapse in hand, so they can't Wasteland me off a counter spell this turn. And then I have a Yeah, I just go ahead and put this back on top of their deck, and they go ahead and pack it in. They're not per se dead here, but like they're pretty dead here. They're going to go down to 5 next turn, and then I have Stifle Bird to cycle into Counterspell to counter their Canra on the following turn and hit them for lethal on my next turn cycle after that. So that is the game, and that's why I think of the ice I kind of like in this style of deck specifically. We're actually a relatively threat-lean deck, but the threats we have are pretty impactful on the board generally. So you see stuff like Iron Creek Pyromancer, Young Pyromancer, this card, Grim Lavamancer. Those style of cards that like tend to equate to, they scale up pretty well as far as board interaction goes. They're relatively cheap, but they tend to do have a pretty deep impact on like horizontal expansion style boards where like they can fight against that pretty well. So yeah, that is game 2 here. I'm going to go on a quick pause, guys. We'll jump into some deck tech. So you got to see me play against, gosh, I got to think now. Enchantress, like Enchantress combo, I guess Enchantress. Paradox Academy, and then this matchup right here. You know what we'll do? We'll jump. We're going to do the first game in that Paradox. No, we're not. It's honestly the first game in that Paradox matchup was exactly the same as the third game. It was very similar. So we're not going to go cover that. I mean, there's not much else to say about it. To be honest, it's just they petered out of resources and we just ground them out. Is what it was. We do the same here with Thing in the Ice, and then game 1, in a very close game, which these matches will tend to be close. Red deck wins is not going to tend to be an extremely favorable matchup for this deck. That said, I built this version of the deck, and you'll see in the deck tech here momentarily, to be more impactful on the board early, so that we can stay alive better in that matchup, and or like versus Death and Taxes matchups like that. And then I think that translates well into this matchup as well. I think in general, like RG Blitz has some advantages over red deck wins, but it generally is kind of a derivative in holistically probably worse deck. When I say holistically worse deck, I mean like on average. Like it has matchups that it's much better in. I think when you start facing off versus like lower removal count mid-range decks, like it tends to be pretty good because you can trade up pretty well with your pump spells, and or just get through more damage with them. But when you start looking at like a broader spectrum of matchups, like I think in general it tends to be a little bit worse. Anyways, guys, quick pause. We'll be back momentarily with the deck tech. Alright guys, so we're going to do this one a little bit differently than we normally do, but I think it'll make sense when I go through how I have the deck broken down. As far as the mana base goes, you can see I have a 20 basic lands. It's possible at this point that I do want to increase by 1 basic snow-covered mountain, because I have increased the red spell density of the deck. But as time goes on, the mana for this style of deck, these 2-color opposing colors decks has gotten a lot better. It's gotten significantly better. So the mana fixing tends to be just fine. Like sometimes you will end up like a red source short, but generally if you want to have 1 red source, it's not very hard to get one. Because we are still playing with the moon effects in this build specifically, you definitely want to have a high basic count. I put those over into their own pile right here that I'm highlighting right now. Back to Basics, Magus of the Moon, Blood Moon. I honestly don't think you need to play them. I think, in some metagames you just cut them and probably play more high-impact independent card, like higher independent card quality cards. Like more threats, more counters possibly, but probably more deck manipulation and more board impact is what I'd probably do. I don't know if I'd go with more counters, because I think right now the deck's pretty maxed out on the counters that I'm very comfortable playing. I think are good and pretty well rounded in the format. So the way you have the deck broken out after you get past the mana base and the moons that are in their own separate pile because they're just like raw disruption, is you have the counterspell pile right here, which I've taken the liberty of kind of expanding that into disruption as well. So you'll have cards like Nimble Obstructionist and Vendilion Clique in this pile as well, although they're not really traditional counterspells. And they also, suffice to say, kind of serve multiple roles in the deck because they're also threats that just kill folks, which is one of the big things that I tend to find is really hard to translate into, like, when I do these deck piles to show like purpose or intent of cards, is how well rounded you want your cards to be. Like a lot of these cards are very close in what they do, so that like they're also board impact. Like I can just block with a Vendilion Clicker and Nimble Obstructionist. Nimble Obstructionist obviously, Brazen Borrower obviously in the air. That one doesn't block everything, but these cards can kind of do a little bit of all of it, right? Like they have a disruptive element attached to them. They can also clock, and they can also keep you alive, block, trade with a resource that you need to get off the board. you name it. So they kind of tend to range a little bit, but like I tried to put them in like their primary purposes, like Vendilion Clique and Nimble Obstructionist, because we're more of a traditional control build, are designed to be disruptive cards before they're designed to be clocks. But we're also not like so lockstep in our deck's progression or how we expect it to progress in each independent game that like we're locked into that, right? Like they can just be good threats too. They're 3-power attackers for 3 that are evasive and they have flash, so they're very good that way as well. Over here you have your Xerox pile. Some of the cards are also like kind of I've taken a little bit of liberty in expanding like what they do. Like Dreadhorde Arcanist is also a clock, can also bring back board impact. It also buys back other cantrips. It's just a card advantage cards that helps you get through cards. Same thing with Royal Scions, can also kill folks. We are running 12 creatures in the deck, which seems a little bit light, but a lot of our creatures are pretty high impact. So you have stuff like Young Pyromancer, which make a bunch of tokens, and then a bunch of evasive stuff. And we have pretty high card velocity because, as you can see, we have a ton of cards that replace themselves. So you start starting down here with Fiery Islet. I am running Ancestral Vision, although I think this is a card that at this point you can probably start cutting from a lot of your builds in Canadian Highlander and just Hunter card in general. It's very slow. One of the big upsells on this card to me is that I'm running Dreadhorde Arcanist. I think another interesting thing you could do with this build is look to check out that new legend in Ikoria that replaces discards with more draws, and then you could play stuff like Faithless Looting, you could play Careful Study, which I'm currently not playing in this build because I've cut the dead card count down a little bit, and I was finding more often than not in this deck specifically, because it's a little more controlling, that having the card quantity, having the volume of cards was a little more relevant. But I think you could probably explore that 3-drop. I believe it's a 0/3 that gets buffed whenever you discard cards, and you get to draw a card for each card you discarded. So like if you're Faithless Looting, I think you draw 4, which is pretty good. Well, you draw 2, discard 2, then draw 2 more. Is what happens, I believe. Is how the card works. But I have to pull it up. I don't actually have that in my collection right now, but I'll probably pick it up at some point. And it's also pretty good with cycling. Like if you cycle Hieroglyphic Illumination, you just draw 2 cards off of it, which is pretty sick. Jace, yep, just good. One of my pointed cards, 1-point card, Dig Through Time, pretty good in this style of deck. Snapcaster can kind of just do all of this stuff. That's kind of why I call it Xerox, because it just offers pretty maximal flexibility. It can be board impact, it can be more draw, it can be a counter spell. It can just be a 2/1 that blocks something or attacks them and kills them or kills a planeswalker or whatever. Search for Iskanta. This is a slower card, but in a deck like this, where like we still are looking to kind of play that, have the ability to play that longer blue game, where like that blue game plan, where like we just cement inevitability. It's getting harder and harder to kind of play the game that way because so many cards are just so powerful independently that if any of them hit the board, like you can lose very easily to them, just on their own. So, I've kind of gone away from a lot of like the bigger 6-drops, like higher counter spell density. I'm not running Factor Fiction in this deck, 'cause it's just really slow, and I often find I just don't have time to tap out for the thing on their EOT, like because they'll have played like a 4-drop Walker, I'll have to counter it, or 3-drop Walker, I'll have to counter it. And it's just a little too expensive. Even though the card's great and I love playing it, I think the format and the game itself has kind of just moved beyond it, to be honest. So, yeah. Alright, yep, Merchant Scroll, another pointed card that I'm running. I'm not running, typically speaking, you'll see people run Spellseeker over Merchant Scroll. I'm not running Spellseeker in this deck specifically because Merchant Scroll does a little more in this deck. It finds Dig Through Time, which is relevant. It also finds Ancestral Recall, which I'm aware the Spellseeker can do as well. But it also finds Force of Will and Force Negation, which are pretty relevant cards in some matchups where you just need to have a hard counter. You just need to have it. Landham's Legacy, this is kind of a weird card. You tend to see more combo-style decks because we are a control deck, and we do have cards like Back to Basics, Blood Moon, Magus of the Moon that are not all that relevant in certain matchups, and or we may not want counter spells, we may want burn cards, we may want more card draw. This just allows you to get rid of what is not relevant at the time to hopefully to get a redraw into something that hopefully is relevant with it at instant speed, which is pretty good. Impulse, yep, just a good one. Brawl, I think it's a great Brawl deck. I enjoy playing this card in this deck because you are playing a lot of counter spells. And the fact that you get to actually loot is very powerful on this card. Having a 1/3 body is not irrelevant. It blocks quite a few things, blocks all the Jackal Pup variants that are out there. It's a legend, so yeah, it can get bounced, but the fact that it lets you loot, and it makes your spells cheaper, and like we're primarily a spell-based deck, right? So making our cards cheaper is also very good because this is a 1 land a turn deck, and getting mana advantage off of a card is very powerful in this style of deck. Alright, the cantrips, so you have Slight, Serum Visions, Preordained, Ponder Up, Brainstorm, Ancestral Recall, my 7-pointer. Gitaxian Probe, Ancestral Vision, which I said is a little bit weird, but like I'm running it because I do want DHA value. And then the Fiery Islets. These are all the ways we have drawing cards. Then you see we have more. I mean, like you could technically put DAC over here as well in like the Xerox pile, because the card definitely is. But I don't tend to run DAC for that reason anymore. I think it's a little slow and a little too low impact if you're just using it to get through cards. And the reason I mentioned that, I am running it in this deck, obviously, but the big reason I'm running it in this deck is because I have a few cards that actually get a lot of value off of drawing through more cards. Specifically, cards like Ironcrag Pyromancer, which, like, I was really high on when it came out. I wanted to test it. Like, I don't want to say I was high on it. I thought the card was really cool, and I still do think it's a very cool card. And it's very board impacting, right? Like, being able to do 3 damage to any target, 1, can win you the game. 2, it just deals with walkers very well. Especially if you're a deck that can draw, 2 cards on your turn, draw 2 cards on their turn, and do 6 damage over a turn cycle. And DAC really helps with that. The other thing with DAC is, we're not running Shenanigans in this deck. It's a card that I have actually been on and again, off again, really depending on the meta. So I want another way to answer artifacts. I think artifact-based decks can be very dangerous in this format, whether they be Storm or Paradox Academy, or just a stompy variety of that deck. And DAC just does that. DAC's just a card that says, hey, I'm going to steal your best artifact, and then you have to attack this thing, and I basically get a fog, and I get to steal your best thing. So it's a mind control, steals your best thing. The floor on it is, I'm just going to get to loot and get rid of irrelevant cards and hopefully find relevant ones, which is also pretty good. But anyways, jumping back, so like I am running DAC mostly to get value off the Ironcrag Pyromancer, and then also to help set up stuff like, if I don't want a vision late, I can get rid of the vision, and I can DHA it back, and I'm just play it that way. So I don't know. DAC is like one of those cards that like I'm on again, off again with. It really depends on the metagame I'm in. It really depends on what is going on, and also again, it kind of goes to show that like where you put DAC in this deck really, is pretty variable, right? Like in different matchups, it's going to be in different places. Like in some matchups, you're just going to want it. Like in blue matchups, you're just going to want it here in this pile because it's going to allow you to get rid of all your red cards that you don't want in a blue mirror. But in most games, like I'm expecting just to use DAC to steal their best artifact. Maybe it's their Mox, maybe it's their Skull Clamp, whatever. Bomat Courier, you name it. But yeah, I've kind of like DAC in this build. Like certain builds you don't need it in, but yeah. Again, just multi-purpose or modality of cards is a big thing. Like in this format, like folks will often like see a new 4-drop or a new 5-drop and be like, man, this card's sick. Like it's really good. I'm gonna crush people with it. It's like, and it's exciting, right? Because you see this new powerful card and like you want to test it out and you want to play it and you want it to be good. And sometimes they are, and you can definitely set up conditions to make 5-drops good, right? But at the end of the day, most of the fights that occur in this format, unless you're on a hypermana deck, are going to be between 1 and 3. Like most of the important interactions that are going to happen in a game, unless you're on a hypermana deck, are going to be between 1 and 3. So, for instance, I guess that a way to equate that is like I can win in this game with a Nimble Obstructionist, or in this deck with a Nimble Obstructionist, or I could put in like an Inferno Titan. And some of the time, like, I'm going to mana drain someone's spell on turn 3, and I'm going to have an Inferno Titan with Counterspell back up on my turn 4, which is just a beating, right? Like, they're just probably dead. It's pretty good, but the median draw with Inferno Titan is, like, it gets played on turn 6, you have to tap out to do it, maybe you have a Force of Will, maybe you don't, it probably dies to removal because you're not a creature-heavy deck, and then it's back to you, and maybe you dealt with a couple threats on the board, and, it really hasn't done all that much, but it took up 6 mana, so it essentially acted as a time walk for you. So, like, one of the philosophies I have in building these decks is that, like, you want your cards to be able to do as many different things that your deck is going to need to be able to do to win the widest range of matchups. That's flexibility, right? And there's some differences in approach, too, right? I mean, some folks are all about the 4 to 6 drops, right? And, like, they think they're great. And they're not the worst, right? Like, in a longer game, like, they are definitely going to win you a ton of games. But I'm of the opinion that, especially in this format, and most Eternal, those are the games you'd be winning anyways. And the games that are contested are normally won or lost in the first 4 turns of the game. So that's kind of why you'll see I'm not running those style of cards, and why I've kind of assessed the cards the way I have. So anyways, let's jump back to the deck. So you have all the counter spells here. I'm not going to go ad nauseum through these, but I already kind of talked some of the weird ones. Like I put Vidilian Clique and Nimble Obstructionist in here because I look at them as being stack-based, one's hands, but stack-based interaction. in a way. They can stop a spell from ever happening or stop an effect, an activated or triggered ability from ever having happened, which is pretty good, but they also clock, right? So that's kind of why I've gone that way. As far as the weakest cards in this pile, I would say Logic Knot is pretty close. You could look to run Is It Charm because it's a very flexible card, but it's not very good at any of the things that it does, I guess is a way to put it. That said, like, I was talking about Careful Study and Faithless Looting, and if you're going to run that new Is It Legend, the Cycling Legend, Is It Charm's pretty good with that card because, you draw 4 cards, right? Which is pretty good. Yeah. And if you're not familiar with Is It Charm, I'm sorry. I'm not going to pull it up, but I'll just tell you real fast. It's a card that and I should have my preview window up. I'm sorry, guys. Going fast and loose through this one. Is It Charm's a card that instant blue-red, draw 2 cards, discard 2 cards, counter target non-creature spell unless opponent pays 2, and or do 2 damage to target creature. Is what Is It Charm does, and it's a fine card. It's very multimodal, but it's a little slow. All right, so I'm gonna jump past my last point, Mana Drain. So my points are Mana Drain 1 point, Dig Through Time 1 point, Merchant Scroll 1 point, and Ancestral Recall at 7 points for the full 10 points of my deck. The next pile we have here is the Board Impact pile, which is kind of one of the distinct ways that this deck specifically is built from a lot of other blue-red decks. Ones that I've historically played tend to be more blue than red. And I tend to find that I'm playing more red cards to be reactive to the board, to have more board reactive capability. And also, there's a lot of good red cards now that are just good clocks and react to the board and are also good clocks. Like for instance, Fiery Confluence, for instance, Shadow Torch of Defiance. Grimm's all right. Young Pyromancer, yes, just a hell of a clock. Yeah. So anyways, first one up is Magnetic Sinkhole. One of the card permanent types that this deck can have or can struggle with is Planeswalkers. Traditionally, this deck would tend to play cards like Into the Roil. Now you have Brazen Borrower and you have Cryptic Command to bounce actual permanents. But Magnetic Sinkhole kind of supplements that plan pretty well because it does 5 damage. It doesn't go to face, but it can kill most creatures and it can kill most Planeswalkers instead of Okos. It's pretty good that way. Shadow TOD, this card is just obscene. Kills a lot of relevant things, produces mana, which is nice. Again, we're a 1 land a turn deck, so if you can kind of jump from 4 to 6 or 4 to 7, it's pretty good. And then it's also just a card engine, which is pretty good too. Fairy Confluence just blows folks out, kills them very fast. Draw or blows up all their mana if they have a lot of artifact mana, kills all their stuff, or kills them. So it just does everything. Muon Ling, I'm testing this card out again. Like I said, I wanted to be more board impactful with this deck and not lose as much to the kind of the turbo board development, your white Winnie decks, your red deck Win decks, your Sui black decks, and this card really does help with that. And it's also just a decent threat too, right? I mean, it doesn't threaten right away, but the turn after it comes into play, it makes a 4/4, which is a decent clock. It could also fly, and in blue matchups, it's a card that isn't going to do anything all that much incrementally, but eventually, if it ultimates, it'll just win you the game because you're drawing a bazillion cards. And it's also just 3 mana, right? It's a pretty low. I wouldn't say the ceiling is exceedingly high on this card, but the median case for the card is pretty good, and it's just 3 mana at the end of the day. Young Peasy. I put this in the board impacting pile. It's really just a threat, but it also can buy you a lot of time, making tokens with this deck and blocking things. Trading burn plus token, etc. is pretty good versus the more aggressive builds, and it also just clocks quickly. So you can transition from your reactive game plan to a proactive game plan relatively rapidly. Iron Creek Pyromancer. Card's fine. I really enjoy this card. I don't know if it's correct or not. But I've found it to be pretty good in a lot of the matches I've played. It is a good card once you're ready to kind of cement inevitability. And it's an alright interim play as well. I think it would be in a much better place if it was a 2-mana card, but that could be said of many cards, so I'm not trying to make that case for it. But even at 3 mana, an 0/4 is something that generally is going to require an attack step plus a removal spell to deal with. And if they don't, this deck sees a lot of cards, and it will tend to allow you to get multiple for 1 advantage off of your Iron Keg Pyromancer in conjunction with your other cards. So I do like it quite a bit. Brazen Borrower card's absurd, just bounce things, kill them, it's just great. Bone Crusher, these adventures are just stupid. They're very, very good. They're broken fair cards, right? Just very good. Scred, you could cut this card. Again, though, like I said, I kind of wanted to have this deck be more board impacting, and this is another one of the cards that, like, if you wanted to be more blue, more of a blue-based deck, more stack impactful, then like you cut Scred, it'd be fine. Bolt, yep, I don't think you're ever cutting that. It's very good. Grim, again, this is another one you could cut alongside Scred, but I wanted to have this deck be very well set up to kind of deal with small creature-based decks, like rush strategies, as it were. Fork Bolt, yep, I don't think you ever cut this one. Flame Slash, this one could be cut. But again, we're not in white. I was kind of not shit-talking this card, but like saying that like I don't know if you need this in Jeskai anymore. I do like it in this deck still, though. I think you don't have the tools that Jeskai has, due to obviously lacking white. Like Winds of Abandon and stuff in that deck now. But Flame Slash still pretty fine. I mean, I think I would play this over Scred, but like I think one of them could go. I don't think you want to cut both, though. I think there's enough board impacting decks, unless your meta was very blue or very combo oriented, then like you just cut all these, like most of the red cards, just go mostly blue, or just leave the direct face damage burned and then go a little more tempo-y with the deck if you want to be combo. But that's not really what the deck's looking to do. It's not looking to be a tempo deck. It's looking to be a control deck. Chain Lightning, yep. I'm on again, off again with this card. Just depends on the metagame I'm in. Yes, it can be tossed back at you, but it's just so cheap. It's so cheap with very little downside. You're not always facing off against red deck wins, and even when you are, like, they're a tap-out deck. Like, they tend to use their mana up, and it tends to be to impact the board early, and if they're impacting the board early and you have this card, it's 1 mana just to kill most everything in their deck. Abrade, again, just one of the better red cards printed in the last couple years. This card is absurdly good, very ubiquitous in pretty much any deck that can run. I don't know if there's a red deck that does, like, I'm trying to think if there's a red deck in this format that, like, does not run this, and it's correct not to run it. I don't think there is. Maybe something splashing red. Thing in the Ice, yeah, card's absurd. You gotta see it in the last game there. Beats up on the board decks. Arc Trail, again, like, this is a flex slot. You can cut this card for another blue card if you wanted to. But I think this card's quite good, and like it's kind of fallen out of favor. But like, there's enough small creature decks that I've been playing like recently, like Mana Dork decks, the Death and Taxes style decks that I kind of like this card. One of the things you do have to look out for is like there are like white Death and Taxes and White Weenie will tend to play pro red cards because red removal is so prolific. But I think your equity's not that bad against those style of cards because you have cards like Booyan Ling which could put them to 0 power. Most of them are 2 power attackers. So you have like your Silver Knights, you have your Core Firewalker is a pretty common one. And then you also have the Brazen Borrower now, and the Cryptic Command, which you've had for a long time, plus Mystic Confluence, plus Jace. Then you also have Stomp off of the Bone Crusher Giant, which allows you to kind of deal with problematic cards like True Name Nemesis or Core Firewalker, etc. Because protection is a prevention as far as damage goes. Fire Prophecy, this is a new card from Ikoria, and one that I've been very happy with. I don't know, I think you had to see me cast it in one game. But this card's quite good, right? Like, one of the issues you can run into with it is like if you're playing against a deck that does not have a lot of creatures, you could lack targets for it, so it makes it tougher to cast. That said, I have a lot of 4 toughness things. Like, I've got the Thing in the Ice, I got the Ironcrag Pyromancer, I have things that I can just target with in my own deck. And very rarely, even in Storm, is a deck completely creatureless. It's pretty rare to see that. It does exist. It is a thing, but it's fairly uncommon, so typically speaking, I find that I'm going to have targets with this thing. I'm also just testing it out, and I've liked it so far. I think the card's really fun. I also think the art's amazing. Like, look at that art. Just great. And this effect is actually kind of rare, right? Like, you have, Scroll Rack, you have Memory's Journey. Let's come back to that one. But you have Latnam's Legacy, this card, Fire Prophecy, Brainstorm, Jace the Mind Sculptor, what is the last one? I can't think of. Sea Beyond. Sea Beyond is another one. So you don't have a ton of cards that actually put cards back from your hand into your deck. I guess you have Anamatu as well, but she is not in these colors. But there's not a ton of cards that actually have that effect, and I think it's a very powerful effect. The ability just to get rid of a card that is not per se relevant right now, but could be relevant later, is very nice. Because you'll find in this style of deck, a lot of cards are all about timing, right? Like your Blood Moon can either operate as a game ender or as a time walk in favor of your opponent. So having effects like Fire Prophecy, I think, are very good. Then you have Fire Ice, then Wandering Fumarole. So just another clock / blocker / board impacting card, and then another board impacting card or a cycler. And that is my build of Blue Moon as it stands right now. I've been pretty happy with this list and how it's performed, at least digitally. I do think there's some more fine work that could be done in it. Like I said, I think you could probably cut the Ancestral Vision. I'm a sucker for DHA value. But I do think it's slow. And I think for the same reasons that I cut Factor Fiction from the deck, you could definitely cut it. And then, honestly, I don't... there's no sacred cows, right? I'm honestly not all that attached to Back to Basics, Magus of the Moon, and Blood Moon. I don't know if I would cut all of them, or if I would only cut, one or two of them. I would think that generally the logic would kind of be consistent to cut all of them if you're going to cut one of them. But, that's not per se true. They all do something a little bit different. Magus has been the one I'm the least high on. The fact that it just dies to every red removal spell ever is kind of rough. And, they can cast basically most of their removal through it to kill it. Tends to be kind of rugged. Also fragile, like Walking Ballista, which I can't recall if you... Yeah, you probably did see it die in that one game to Walking Ballista that they had in hand. Yeah, I was talking with someone else who thought Back to Basics was the worst one. I don't know. I think Back to Basics is better than Magus, but I don't know. You could definitely even cut those and then, put in more win cons, more board impact. There's a lot you can do with it, but then again, it's control, guys, right? And control is always going to be a meta deck. So, that said, what is my deck tuned for? It's tuned to beat rush strategies, low to the ground, aggressive creature strategies, and I think it's fine in most other matchups as well, but it's definitely more tuned up to beat those style of decks. And if you don't have to face that commonly, I would say there's a significant amount of revision you can do to the deck to make it more appropriate for your metagame, i.e. cut a lot of the red cards and put in more blue cards that counter stuff if you're playing against Storm decks or combo decks. Against Storm you want Clock. You want to cut some of the board impacting burn that only goes to creatures. Put in more threats, put in more counter magic against that style of deck. Basically become more tempo-y. If you're facing off against a lot of other control decks, you probably want to put in a Niv Mizzet, just a big dumb that is uncounterable. And then more blue cards. More blue cards, Niv Mizzet, a big finisher that's uncounterable. Or Chandra's fine too, but I think Niv Mizzet's just better than Chandra. In blue mirrors, specifically. Chandra's another card you could run if you were if you wanted to have another board impacting card, but I just think she's too clunky. I don't think she kills fast enough. I would honestly rather resolve an Inferno Titan against red deck wins than I would a Chandra, because Inferno Titan basically does the same thing. It basically board wipes them for the most part, or makes it impossible for them to attack, and then if it ever attacks them, they just die generally. Because it kills every single thing they got on the board, and they take a bazillion, they take 9 or whatever. But that said, there's a lot you can do with this style of deck, and that's kind of one of the reasons why this deck's always just kind of hanging on. And I think it's going to probably consistently in the future still be a good tier 2 archetype. I don't think it's a tier 1 arc. I just don't think it's capable of having consistently spanning all of the requirements that are put on it by the other powerful linear decks in the format to really be a consistent tier 1 deck. I do think it has the ability to beat any of the tier 1 decks, but I do think it requires a greater volume of luck than it does for them to enact their game plan against you, if that makes sense. Now, the way this deck's tuned, it's set up to beat red deck wins and white weenie in that sort of meta. I don't think it's a dog versus Oracle combo right now, and I think it has the ability to beat Storm. Do I think it's great versus those decks? Not great. It's probably better against Oracle. Thinking about it now, honestly, this deck may be more situated to beat Oracle because of the moon effects, because Oracle is required to play basically only up to, I guess you could have up to 6 basics, unless you're going 4 color. You're probably only running 4 to 5 basics in that deck, though, because you have to have access to Tainted Packs, so you have a snow, 3 snows and 3 basics, or 2 snows, 2 basics, and then 1 basic of another type if you're an Esper. But either way, that's sort of, I think, in my opinion, what the top of the metagame looks like right now as far as the most competitively viable decks. And this deck can still beat them. It still can, but it's hard to really tune it to beat all of them simultaneously well. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the content. I definitely enjoy getting to play this deck. I enjoy getting to pick it back up and kind of go through and revamp it, because I haven't gone back through and kind of with a fine-tooth comb and redone this deck. I put a version of it up in my tap down, but it had Big Plats in it, and I hate Big Plats. I'm not a fan of that combo, Madcap Experiment plus Platinum Imperium. I think it is far too clunky. But yeah, it'll definitely win you certain matchups. So anyways, guys, I'm going to go ahead and cut it there. I hope you enjoyed the gameplay and the deck tech here. Apologies for not having the display window up, but you did get some live gameplay in the beginning. You kind of get to see this cool, old-school style control deck that I think, we're bringing into the times and is a little more proactive than it historically has been. I think more work can be done on it, but I do think it's also quite strong list. I think you could definitely do well with it if you play well with it. All right, guys, enjoy and take care now.